Yes, hello. My name is Jesper, and I'm the author behind J.C. SpringBourne, and I'm gonna read another short story from my book. I have no idea if I am on the camera, but and I hope you will subscribe to my little YouTube channel, or maybe even buy my book. This story is called The Visitor, and it's a fun little story for everybody. The Visitor. Chapter 1. The Hop. It was a stupid bet, and I lost it. When I was in 8th grade, I made a bet with my best friend and this girl I liked. Maria had the nicest smile and the cutest laugh. We bet on who was going to be the first in space. It was for a kiss from Maria. I was number 3 in my school class, which was still a feat. The space station was run by SETI, and I was the newest member of the crew. I was in the passport section of the spaceport. We had already passed the other checks and only needed the last one before boarding the spaceship. A small girl in front of me had a cat in her basket. The girl had the distinct features, the sloping ears and the short yellow hair of an alien, even when you looked at her from the back. She had her cat in a basket, which meant it was not a human cat. The officer behind the counter said, "Sorry, your passport doesn't allow you to take this cat with you." The girl said, "But it has been cleared and is clean." He nodded and explained, "Yes, but you need another passport, a pet one, for the cat." I stepped up to the counter. "What is the problem?" The officer looked at my science uniform and nodded. "Sorry, sir, the girl doesn't have a passport for the cat." I took my passport and showed him. "Can the cat go on mine?" He looked at my passport, scanned it into his system. "Yes, you have a pet allowed on yours." The passport of a spaceman had an allowance for a support animal/pet, but I never had trouble flying in space. I asked, "The cat has been cleared, and only the paperwork needed to be fixed." He nodded and said, "Yes, I can give you permission." His hand made signs in the air to take your pet with you. He smiled, and I nodded, and we got the line moving. The young girl said, "Thanks, mister." I looked at the cat and said, "Well, we need to help each other and our visitors." As we walked towards the gate, I said, "And my guess is that is not an Earth cat." She smiled, and we entered the gate. She had a VIP seat, and I just got a free one. It sounds cool to be a spaceman, but I was just the cook's assistant or dishwasher. It got me off the planet, but it was a month too late to win the bet. And why was SETI still looking for signs of alien life when we already had found 4 races? I don't know. We sat down inside the shuttle, which would take us from Earth to the hub. The anti-gravity lifts turned on, and the ship slowly started to lose gravity. After 10 seconds, the ship was free of Earth's gravity, and the 4 turbine blades on the side started to turn. You heard them spinning up, even through the spaceship's side. Maybe it was a kind of vibration and not the sound that I heard. They would carry us up to 10 kilometers straight up, and then the rockets would be fired to get us off of Earth. It cut down on the energy needed to get into space, and it was kind of fun to float if you forgot to buckle down. Some kids always forgot it, and the flight attendant had to catch them and get them down into their seats. We reached the 10-kilometer mark, and for a minute the ship was just stationary in orbit. When they had run their checks, the locks were released and the ground lifter was detached. The anti-gravity was still working because it was part of the main hull, like a shield covering the lower part of the ship, repelling the gravity pull from Earth. The rockets fired. The ship started to shake from side to side, and we got the last part into space. The light from the day faded, and we slowly saw the darkness of space. Another minute, and we could start to see the stars. We were ascending into the night side, just beyond the border between night and day. The goal was the hub. It was placed at the point where gravity between Earth and the Moon was cancelled out. The hub was the place to go if you liked space adventures. The Earth's Navy was stationed there, and lots of cool ships would land and take off from it. It was also where I would find my next ship to the last leg of my journey. My best friend should be there as a space marine recruit, and he had been the first off the planet about a year ago. Maria had been second about a month after him. She had gotten a job as a flight attendant/nurse on one of the large cruise ships that went cruising around the planets. I had been right after her as I got my job as a cook's assistant on the SETI Space Science Station. It had been 9 months, and I had just had my first holiday on Earth. The supply ship was taking off in about 10 hours, and I had to be on it to get to my job. The space station was placed on the dark side of the sun, or more precisely, on the opposite side of Earth. The SETI space station was placed in the Goldilocks zone, where there was minimal noise from Earth, except when the station was close to Mars. The scientists were all working. Mars was starting to become colonized, and it sent out its own radio noise. I hope a part of you want to become a subscriber and listen to what I read, or maybe even buy my books. Chapter 2: SETI Station. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It sounded grand and important, but here in the middle of the 21st century it had kind of lost its meaning, particularly since we were identified and had been visited by 4 alien species. 2 of them lived in the same environment as humans. I walked around the hub and looked for the space marine training facilities and found the customer office, and was told my friend was on Mars doing some kind of training to become a marine. Later, I found the departure bay for the supply ship going to my workplace. There were maybe 20 others there, but except for the alien girl with the cat, I didn't know any of the others. Well, they all knew me because of my second job. On top of my dishwashing adventures, I also helped run the shop. It was just 3 by 4 meters and had small rooms or cells for maybe 500 items. Mostly candy and soda, but also personal appliance and cleaning supplies. There were also 10 construction workers in the waiting room. They were wearing their lightweight spacesuits with clear yellow, green and orange markings, so they were easy to see in space. The spacesuit was easiest to carry on the ship this way. I always felt more at home with the workers than with the science. My friend would say it was because of my low IQ, but then I scored higher than him on the final math test. We walked into the ship and were strapped down and given the needles for the hypersleep. We could only travel at close to 10% of light speed, so it would take about a week to get to the station. To conserve energy, we all spent that week in hypersleep. We woke up as the ship exited the let's pretend hyperspeed. The windows on the ship were showing the station as we got closer. I had been lucky this time and gotten a window seat, and I could see the station as we approached it. It took about an hour after you woke up for your body to start working again. That was why they woke us up about an hour or two before we reached the station. The SETI station was in space. It sounded great and was a fun place to work. But it was just 100 different colored containers placed side by side in space. It had a giant disk on the dark side and solar panels on the side facing the sun. The dock extended its white plastic arm to the ship, and we were linked with a simple thumb. After the sound of air being pumped into the seal, the door was ready to be opened from the inside. The white door had a large red handle that the young flight attendant swung 3 times around. The door gave way and she pulled it in, so we could see the departure tunnel. This tunnel was just wide with a few windows, because this was not the sightseeing trip. All those who were here was working, except for the alien girl with the cat. I had my black duffel bag and red backpack, and I exited the ship into the near zero gravity of the space station. It had artificial gravity in the core, but at the dock, which was the farthest point from the middle, the fake gravity was weak. I made my way down the tunnel and through the station. After the second pressure door, there was enough gravity to walk more or less normally. Gravity in the base was oriented towards the sun, and the rooms and the corridors were decorated that way. Actually, you could change gravity in any direction, and after 10 minutes, people would go about their lives. The kitchen was next to my small cabin. It was lucky that I was short, because then the bed fit me. I waved at the guys in the kitchen before placing my bags in my cabin. The room was small with a low ceiling and was placed next to one of the life support rooms, which was why I had it alone. The top of the room was where the air filters were placed. I could stand up in one corner, but otherwise I would have to bend down. I sat on my bed and placed my things in the lockers. Sometimes the noise from the life support would wake me up at night, but most night I could sleep through it. There was a knock on the door, and the second cook looked into the room. He smiled and said, "So." I handed him the magazines and the bag he had ordered. The bag had real condiments from Earth, and according to the cook, they were much better than the freeze-dried stuff. He was the one who had gotten me the clearance for the hub and the fake science officer stuff. The magazine were his dirty secret. He was a collector of origami and needed the right kind of paper. The skill worked on most types of paper, and he did some funny thing with hand skills and napkins, but some paper was better. Sometimes he would make a simple swan and place it on the tray as it entered my dishwashing room. Chapter 3: The Shop. The room was just 4 walls, mounted with shelves for different canned or bagged food or candy. It had 500 small cells, each with an electronic label and the price of the object. The cell rooms had a small door with magnetic locks like on a fridge. This was to keep things from floating around the room in the event of zero gravity. There was a spare room with extra stuff behind a locked door, and a second, larger room 1 floor over. The resupply came once a week, and we needed supplies for the next 2 weeks. I walked down the aisles and looked at the cells. The manager of the shop was sitting at the counter. You could check out your own stuff, and we only needed help if something was broken, or as the case right now, when items needed to be restocked in the cells. There was a small cart, which we used to fill up stuff. I opened a door with the sound of the magnet letting go, and then filled in 10 cans of cola. The next room had orange sodas, and I filled that up, just working my way down the line. So this alien kid, the manager explained. Her cat is some kind of detector? I looked at him over the door. Why didn't they have a permit for her? I had to assist her in connecting to the hub. He was reading on his handheld screen, not answering my question, and shook his head. Some kind of unknown signal from the galaxy core. He stood up as an security officer entered the room. The officer moved next to the manager and looked at me. Can I speak with him alone? He nodded at me and went to his other room, to his other job. He was the waiter in the mess hall, so he walked into the mess and started cleaning tables. I closed the door to the orange sodas and looked at the officer. So what can this dishwasher/shop clerk do for you? He sat down in the chair which the manager had left. "You helped an alien on the ship?" I nodded and walked to the next door. Yeah, she was clean and only needed help getting on the hub ship. I opened the next door with canned peanuts and started filling them up. He asked, "And she didn't say anything to you?" The door was closed and I turned to him. "No, I asked if it was a real cat, but I never got an answer. When I was a kid, we had cats." The officer stood up, found a bag of jelly beans and paid for them, and he opened it and took one out. "No, they don't speak with outside people, but maybe you were unique." He had already left the shop before I could think about his sentence. The last item from the cart had been filled up, and I scanned through the rest of the rooms. I found some things that were broken. One bag of chips was open and laid behind the rack, where the others were placed. It took me a minute to clean it out. The manager came back and asked, "So what did he wanted to know?" I smiled. "Secret spy stuff." "No," I explained as I took the hand vacuum cleaner behind the desk. "Only if I spoke with the alien girl, but she never responded." There was a call from the kitchen, and I needed to go and wash the dishes. Most of the plates and glass could go into the dishwasher, but some things needed to be hand-washed. The view over the dishwashing sink was the best. If I turned down the light, I could see space with its deep darkness, and all of its stars. Here I fantasized about traveling into deep space, visiting aliens' worlds. The mess hall was placed in 3 container rows with pressure doors between them. The right side was the officer and science mess. The middle was the kitchen and the dishwasher station where I worked, and on the left were the workers, technicians, and science helpers. When you ate, you could choose a window on the ground facing the sun, or a window on the roof facing into space. Or you could eat away from the windows, and then it would feel like most normal restaurants if you ignore the guys in spacesuits. The sunlit windows were the way we got light inside the rooms. The sun never set, and we had sun all the time in the rooms and the kitchen. The shop was also in the middle because we from the kitchen crew ran it. I placed a bag of chips in the kitchen and wrote it off as broken, but the guys might still get a free handful of chips. In the washing room were lots of grey plastic trays, and clean and dirty cutlery, glasses and plates. A slot for dirty trays to roll in from the kitchen, and a tray cart with room for 5 trays for the clean ones to get rolled out into the kitchen. The dishwasher was a large steel machine with 2 conveyors and room for 3 trays on the dirty side and 5 on the clean side. You took the tray inside the metal box, pulled down the metal cover, and the hot, soapy water would spray the dishes in a minute. 30 seconds with soap, 30 seconds with clean water. After a minute, the cover would go up, and you will get a tray filled with hot, steamy and clean plates, cups or whatever else you had on the tray. You always looked in over to make sure it was clean. The tray was moved to one of the dry stations, and they would stand there for a couple of minutes. You could get the next tray ready and roll it into the machine. Repeat until there were no more dirty dishes. It was hot work, but somebody had to do it. But I had music and all the extra food I could eat. Like in the shop, when somebody broke a bag of chips or some candy, you shared it with the kitchen. It also worked the other way around. When food had not been eaten, you got to eat it. I normally lift up french fries and meatballs like a kid home alone. One of the guys in the kitchen also forced us to eat vegetables because in space you needed vitamins. The head cook looked inside the room and asked. An alien girl was asking if you wanted to visit her place. I was hot and sweaty from working with the dishwasher and was pulling tray number 10 to the clean side. I said, "Yeah, I assisted one in boarding the hop ship. Did she talk with you?" Nobody answered, and I looked around in the room. The room was empty and the door was closed. The music stopped for a heartbeat, and the dishwasher machine was mute. For a second there was no sound in the world. I shook my head. Maybe I was dreaming or going space sick, which happened. When your body goes from Earth to space, something about the inner air is forced into different shapes than on Earth. I had never had that problem. Why was I not dreaming about Maria? Was the real question. I smiled to myself as the music started with a new song, and the next tray came through the slot in the wall. Chapter 4. The Chance. Once more I was sleeping in my small cabin. The dream was a weird one, but I was sure it was a dream. The previous 2 dreams the last night had also been strange. I was flying in a large alien ship while cleaning dishes. The sun outside was blue and the space station was alien. It looked like a pink watermelon with several light green arms going out from it. Those arms could be docking tunnels like the ones we used. One of them nearly enveloped a small alien ship. The ship looked like a cube with holes in the center. A knock came on my door. I rose, answered it, and the officer who visited me in the shop looked into my small room. I climbed out of the bed and sat on the edge. Sorry, I was sleeping. Did the alien girl say anything to you? He asked, for a long moment of staring into my He asked after a long moment of staring into my face. Trying to wake up from the dream only to be drawn into a conversation you had 3 days ago. I shook my head while trying to wake up. No, not a word. Why, what had she said to you? He tilted his head. They don't speak with us, only write. I frowned. She spoke with the customer officer on Earth, I think. He smiled. No, she didn't. We had seen the video of the whole thing, and you did all the talking with him. She never spoke a word. I stood up in the small cabin and motioned to the door. The room was too small for visitors. He walked out of the room and I followed him. I was in underpants and a t-shirt, but this was crew quarters, so there was nothing wrong with that. The corridor was empty and I said to him, I had not seen or spoken with her or anybody else but kitchen staff while I have been here. The girl wrote that she wanted a visitor with her on the trip. He turned his head. Does it ring a bell? No, I said with a frown on my face. Nothing. I work as a dishwasher. That's the level of science I'm into. I scratched my head. Is the plate clean enough, or? My hands waved at the place where the large telescope was placed on the space station. He nodded and asked me, "But if you get a chance to go, would you go?" I said yes, and crawled back into my cabin and my dream. It was only after I walked into the dishwashing room the next morning that the dream and the other strange experience came back to me. I attempted to locate the officer's contact information and called him. The video of him was from a small office. I told him about the dream and the weird experience and asked if that was what he was talking about in my cabin. He shook his head and frowned. "No, we have not spoken since we talked in the shop." The window behind him was one of the few sideways views where you could see both the sun and the stars. Something red and green was moving in the sunlight. He asked, "What do you remember about the talk?" Perhaps it was just a dream within a dream, I shrugged. We signed off and I walked back to my dishwasher and left the big brain stuff for others. I just knew how to wash dishes. An alarm sounded. I didn't recognize the sound, but it didn't sound dangerous. I opened the door out of the kitchen. It was in near darkness, and the others were standing and looking down the window on the floor. It was one of those that looked at the sun, and it was used to light up the room. But right now the sun was being turned off. I walked to the others and asked, "What is happening?" Somebody turned on the emergency light and we could see a little in the room. One of the busboys came in from the mess. Something large is blocking the sun. In the window we could not see anything but the darkness of the ship as it slowly covered the sun. One of the kitchen guys said, "It looked like an alien spaceship. Maybe it is docking with us." The officer who had talked with me in the shop came running down the corridor and shouted, "Kid, are you ready to leave?" The alien girl was standing next to me and told me, "You humans are hard to talk with. Do you want to visit my home?" The officer rounded a corner and blurted, "The aliens want you as their visitor. They have asked you and you said yes." I nodded at him and then looked after the alien girl, but she was no longer there. The officer explained, "They don't talk but dream their words." He started pulling me towards the kitchen crew quarters. I only found out after I saw the video from Earth. We moved through a pressure door and he continued, "She got you to talk with the customer's officer. You have 10 minutes to park," he said as he opened the door to my cabin. "We have never had a human visiting their world." The door was closed and I sat down alone in my small cabin. Was I ready to travel into outer space? The end. Thank you for listening. The next story are a little bit darker, but I hope a part of you want to buy my small book from Amazon. Or if not, then just listen to my stories and good day.